Cheers, everyone. It's Sleepy Reader, aka Damien, here with my comic book thoughts for the week. I got 8 comics this past Wednesday, April 3rd, and I'm going to talk about them in my usual format of a countdown. So, from 8, my least favorite, to number 1, my most favorite. Of amongst those 8, they're not, I would say they were not the greatest week of comics I've had since coming back to this pull list. What is the cat doing over there? Um, I'm drinking some iced coffee with a huge amount of milk in it. Keep my tummy feeling good. Um, yeah, if anything, if there was any theme to my reading, it was science fiction and maybe fantasy to some extent, worlds not as fleshed out or thought out by the writers, or at least as appears on the page to me, as I would have liked. Anyway, I picked up this comic from Magma Comics. I've never heard of them before. Um, Called The Principles of Necromancy. And I wasn't expecting a lot. I just thought it might be amusing. My daughter really likes this science fiction novel about necromancers in outer space. What's it called? The Locked Tomb series. And so I just saw the word necromancy and I thought, hey, that might be something fun to read together. But I didn't even pay attention to what was on the cover here. This is an incredibly gory horror fantasy. And so not nothing I as soon as I flipped through it, once I brought it home, I realized nothing my daughter would want to read. I didn't hate reading it or anything, and there was parts of bits about the art and coloring that were kind of cool. Um, but ultimately it was so gross, and I think that was the point in the end. Um, should I show you the really gross creature that basically, it doesn't involve necromancy in terms of magic. It involves I guess, hyped up Dr. Frankenstein type of character who goes around and operates on dead bodies and ultimately attaches dead bodies to the bodies um, of one living guy and turns him into a gigantic, grotesque, although very imaginatively drawn monster. Maybe I will show you the monster. If you think you might want to see this, read this book, and you don't want to see the monster, you can zip forward a bit. Um, so there is the monster. The one living guy, that's his head there. And there's like the body parts of all the other members of his tribe. Um, and yeah, and the doctor is called Dr. Eyes, but he seems to have buttons instead of eyes. Let me see. So this is kind of fun to talk about. There's Dr. Eyes. It doesn't really, like, this is kind of a medieval world, but they've got a Dr. Frankenstein wandering around. And vaguely we have the idea of there's a sort of more civilized people who've burnt down the villages of the more primitive people who live in the woods. So the more primitive people are trying to, fight back against this city of knights, I think they call it. The knights kill them all except for the one guy, and then the guy lets the doctor operate on him. Or does he let him? Or maybe the doctor forces himself on him. So anyway, some people might like this. I guess it's going to continue. Um, I don't know if, like, there's the image for next issue. I don't know if this Dr. Eyes is just going to travel through a bunch of different stories, or whether we see more of what happens to this monster that he made. I'm now looking at that cover for next issue. I'm wondering if there'll be anything. It's surprised. This is by Jason. The writers are Jason Lansing and Colin Kelly, who I think have done a lot of work for DC and Marvel and other bigger publishers. So, and it says this is one of their first creator-owned comics in a long time. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting that it even exists. But I didn't enjoy reading it at the time that I was reading it, which is what these countdowns are all about. Completely just my reaction to books. not the bigger critical picture or what have you. So, for instance, everybody seemed to love Rook Exodus, but I just thought it was okay. Um, what it almost reminded me of is maybe like in the Warren magazine, Warren and Creepy and Eerie. In the later part of their run, they did a lot of sort of science fiction and fantasy stories that might continue for a few issues. And this seemed like the kind of character that might be in one of those stories, which is ironic because he's named Rook. And there was a character named Rook, actually one of their more popular ones at Warren, who was a time traveler, but this is nothing like that. He's called Rook because he, with the use of his helmet, can mentally communicate and partially control crows. And he's on a dying planet. This has a kind of cool science fiction setup. And I really liked the setup. So that there's the dying planet. The planet's dying because it was a terraformed planet with a world machine on it that kept it uh, compatible with human and Earth life. And now that world machine is broken down and everyone's leaving. But for some reason, I didn't quite understand the Warrens, what are they called? Wardens of different animals are still on the planet, although the whole ecology is about to collapse in about a week or week and a half or something like that. And the remaining wardens, along with help from their animals, are trying to find enough parts to build a rocket ship to get off the planet. So it seems like a story that would have a pretty quick in and out, maybe 3 issues or something. Or in the old Warren comics, maybe 3 6-page stories, something like that to wrap up. I so I mildly enjoyed it. The art is cool, but somehow the combination of the art and color in this book didn't work that well for me, which was surprising because I do like Brad Anderson's coloring, and he's coloring all of these Ghost Machine books, at least all the ones written by Jeff Johns, who seems to be the main power, the main force behind Ghost Machine. As far as I know, he's writing all but one of the Ghost Machine books. I do think Ghost Machine's really cool. I don't know why it's called Ghost Machine, but I love the quality of the books, and they definitely have artists doing their A game. This one just did not click with me, but I liked a bunch of other I like the other Ghost Machine ones quite a bit more. I didn't hate this, if I had endless time, I would probably continue with Rook, but I only have so much time and so many and way too many things to read. So I think I probably for the moment won't continue with Rook. A lot of people loved it. Maybe I'm missing something, or maybe I'll jump on it in a trade or something if I keep hearing good things. In at number 6, another science fiction. So both that one and this one are kind of dealing with people leaving Earth and trying to start a new life on another planet, which is interesting. Although Crashdown is very different. That cover is amazing, which belies the fact that the art is just the art never fit the story that well, and I feel like it's going downhill, or its weaknesses for a science fiction, a sort of hard science fiction, at least hard science fiction in the hardware. We've got giant spaceships, and then smaller spaceships, and a planet, and an army and security kind of people, and all of that. And that's our security people there. It just doesn't give you uh, I harped on the art previously, but this time it really hurt it. So Crashdown would have been, with different art, would have been much higher on my list. I still like the writing a lot, but the art is really starting to hurt it for me. Um, but I'm also wondering how if it feels like this is a really rich story that could go on for 20 issues or 30 issues. But I believe it's either 6 or 8. I'll stick with it to the end. I want to see where they're going with all this. But it seems like they're going. I don't see how there could be a happy ending. Let me put it that way. Uh, but really interesting stuff from the writers, and just I don't know, just too bad they hooked up with the wrong artist, in my opinion. So that was at number 6. The Rook was number 7. The Necromancy book was at number 8. In at number 5 is Geiger, another Ghost Machine book. For some reason, my shop didn't have it. They saw this in previews and they thought they'd seen this cover before and that it was just a reprint of the first Geiger series, so they didn't order it. But then when I was on a comic crawl with Travis and John and Travis's friend Ivan, who was visiting from out of town, we were on a comic crawl and I saw Geiger at another shop, so I grabbed it. I love the art in here. More science fiction, sort of post-apocalyptic, with a guy who's kind of a cross between the Hulk and the Drifter from High Plains Drifter type of character. So it definitely feels Wild West in here. And you know, he's all about I don't care, I'm not out here to help people, but I get angry and then I end up helping them. And he develops a bit of a sidekick. So I enjoyed this a lot, but it's very um if there's a deeper level to it, I miss it. I missed that when I read the original miniseries. Um, I kept thinking when I read the original miniseries that something more about the character Geiger would develop. But man, it's visually cool. Here, the Brad Anderson colors look fantastic. So just somehow Brad Anderson's colors didn't mesh as well, in my opinion, with Fabok as they do here with uh, Gary Frank. And this is great Gary Frank work, really great, and great Brad Anderson work, and a perfectly fun story from Jeff Johns. I'm just I the thing that puzzles me about there's the Ghost Machine, which is the publication. Then there's the Unnamed Universe, which some of the comics are part of the Unnamed Universe and some aren't. I don't know why it's the Unnamed Universe. I don't know why it's Ghost Machine. Um, I don't know even what really connects all of these. Not that it really matters as long as there's good comics. I don't know why there's go-go checks on the top. Were there go-go checks here? No, this did not have go-go checks. We'll have to see if the other books from maybe the go-go checks imply the unnamed. Go-go checks to me imply there's a connection to Silver Age DC Comics. Maybe the connection here is the Atomic Knights. Um, I don't know. That's the closest. Like, in fact, there are characters who are called the Atomic Knights, but they're not good guys. Then in this was a big. I almost did not grab this comic, but I flipped through it in the store, and the art seduced me back in because I really like this artist. Because I did not like the first issue of Torpedo 1972. This is the second issue. Very minimalistic cover, but but the Eduardo Riso art, and is he the colorist too? Because I don't see a colorist listed. Um, I thought there was a separate colorist last issue, but anyway, the Eduardo Riso art is just sort of perfect for the gritty yet comedic story they're doing here. And we got much more sort of really grim, almost in bad taste, violent humor. We shouldn't be laughing at all these people dying, but that's kind of what we're doing. Um, and it strike the right cartooniness. There was something in the first issue, particularly in dealing with the woman who gets raped, that hit me really wrong. So in a way, I feel guilty for picking up this second issue at all. But anyway, it's clicking much better in this second issue. There's almost a brief moments where, but there is no hero in this. But it reminds me almost of the underworld of the spirit or something like that. that these guys inhabit. So anyway, fun comic to read. It's a reprint, I assume, of a European album. Although usually if European albums have different proportions and there ends up being big white spaces at the bottom and top of the page, and this seems to fit okay. I assume they did not do this for the American audience, but maybe however, in whatever country it was originally published, was in proportions that fit these pages. So that, I don't know. I just love the art in here, and it's a funny enough story. I should look into who Enrique Sanchez Abule is, the writer. I don't know if that's the writer of the original Torpedo stories. I actually have a Torpedo collection, but it's probably off in my storage place. In at number 3, I'm putting Usagi Yojimbo. Usagi Yojimbo is used to holding the number 1 spot in many a countdown from me. But this has seemed the last series I really loved. Um, but this series begins with the Usagi and his cousin walking through the landscape and walking into yet another village and getting involved in yet another situation. And it feels like it's starting to feel a little samey in the last couple of miniseries here. So I still enjoyed reading it a lot, but it just didn't quite have the same zing that Usagi has often had for me in the past few years, past 3 or 4 years since they started doing color Usagi is when I started reading it. So however long that's been. It looks really nice actually now that I'm looking through it. Great color. The coloring is just right for Usagi. It's just, yeah, it doesn't have quite as much zing as a Usagi normally does, but it could pay off still. This is 1 of 5. So we'll see how the story develops. The main concept is there's this criminal or bandit who has a psychic connection or just has trained a crow really well. He and the crow work together. And Usagi and his cousin think that he's being attacked by brigands, and they actually rescue him. And then later they find out that these are bounty hunters and everyone's after the crow. So, and you know, it's good enough, but it didn't distinguish itself as much as usual. Uh, in at number 2, I put number 3 of The One Hand. As I noticed in its companion comic last week, the story is beginning to grab me more. And this time, so the last in the Sixth Finger, we're following the person who probably is the current serial killer. And in this issue, we're following the detective who seems to be kind of losing it a bit. He goes and interviews the person who he put in jail 6 years ago as the serial killer. And the conversation there is very interesting. It definitely goes deeper into sort of the sense of a horror movie. And I don't know, the current guess from the kind of stuff they're giving us is there's some kind of spirit that inhabits different people and causes them to act out as the same as the previous serial killers. Uh, but I don't fully know if that's what's going on. And there's a whole sort of subplot where there are these androids or robots um, who are therapists or prostitutes. I'm not even sure, and but also can end up on assembly lines. I need to go back and reread this to try to figure out what's going on there. So this is science fiction, but it looks like the 1970s, with um, phones with antennas on. Well, maybe the 1980s. When did we first get phones with little antennas on them, and voice machines with cassette tapes in them and stuff? But then there's robots, and we were told in the first issue that this is 700 or 800 years in the future. So there's something weird about that, and I don't know if it's because the science fiction is kind of sloppily put together here, or if there's a master plan behind it. I'm hoping there's a master plan. Anyway, I definitely need to go back and read all the issues so far, but I am enjoying it more. There's a really gross image towards the end that I don't even understand because it looks like piles of meat with a head on top, but the piles of meat are way more than one human body could produce. So I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. And that was pretty gross. Anyway, that was number 2. And in at number 1 was my favorite of the 3 Ghost Machine comics that came out this week, Redcoat number 1. Uh, again with Brad Anderson inking and fantastic line art and continuity page layouts by Brian Hitch, um, colorist and artist and line artist, fully in sync, I felt. And this story has magic and history and violence and a lot of comedy. And it's very what's the right word? It has a very jaundiced view of humankind, I would say, and also involves kind of a secret history of the American Revolution that involves a lot of magic that might have been stolen away from the Native Americans. I'm not sure if that's fully the concept, but yeah, I really like this character of the red coat. He's a rogue. He's a coward. He makes a great narrator. Uh, the weird thing is, okay, I had this comic that I bought at MegaCon, and it was kind of a sampler, I thought, of issue number 1 of Redcoat, but it seemed to give Redcoat a different origin than we see in here. So I'm a little puzzled by that, like where his immortality came from. But I, perhaps stupidly, gave away that con exclusive because I was kind of frustrated with it at the time, at how much it cost and how little it had inside. So I can't really compare them now. I don't have that in my ownership anymore. But anyway, incredible artwork. Um, because the artwork is a 5-star book. Because it's kind of a frivolous story, it's hard for me to give it overall 5 stars, but maybe that's unfair of me. The vibe I get kind of is like the best issues of Archer and Armstrong. Only in Archer and Armstrong you had this action comedy story with an immortal character, but you had another character to play off of. And perhaps the flaw to Redcoat will be that he's such a loner and has no one to play off of. But maybe not. It's interesting that in this first ongoing issue of Geiger, they're seemingly adding a comedic sidekick in there for him. Anyway, this was incredible, and it seemed very long. I think it was over 30 pages, maybe 32 pages of actual art, and tons of these double page spreads that Brian Hitch makes such good use of. It's interesting. Brian Hitch really stretches out the bodies, and when we're not doing superheroes, I noticed that even more. But I'm not complaining. I really love this. Oh, look, and it does have the go-go checks. So is Redcoat in some way a reference to a Silver Age, mid-60s comic book from DC? I guess DC never copyrighted these go-go checks. Of course, race cars use them and stuff. Anyway, so that was a lot of fun. Redcoat really did top off my pile for me. My daughter and I, for a while, were reading the DC Book of Lists, which I bought at Barnes and Noble. It's published by Running Press. Uh, Obviously, they licensed it from DC. And So we would read a list or two or three or four before bedtime every night. And if you're into this kind of thing, it's quite if you're into DC, if you're into books that kind of have lists and it's kind of just almost funny to see all the different things, all the different people who trained Batman, it kind of brings out the kind of absurdity that happens when you look at DC as kind of having a history because there's been so many different stories. No, 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 the cat wants to drink my coffee. I don't think coffee would be good for a cat, even as watered down as mine is. So Wonder Woman's Amazon Arsenal, the alternate identities of Superman. She's going for the coffee. Okay, now I'm going to move the coffee back here. Uh, living locations, sentient streets, cities, islands, and planets. So some of these lists go on quite long. The book has a very appealing design, and it's a lot of fun. When we finished it, we just wished there was more. Yeah. So, and for a nicely built hardback, it was only $24. I guess I didn't get it at a discount because I bought it in the store. But enter the Firestorm Matrix. Different people who've been inside Firestorm. I guess there's been a lot. I didn't even know. The Legacy of Robin. So I don't know if I didn't have my daughter as my partner in crime of loving DC Comics trivia. I don't know if I would have read the whole book on my own. Um, so your mileage may vary. Let's list. Buy the book. The biographies, secret histories, and bestsellers found on the bookshelves on Earth and beyond. I don't know if my daughter and I read this one. I don't even remember it. We might have skipped it by accident. Anyway, really enjoyed this book. And so I was kind of craving finding some other sort of ancillary book about comics. And I stumbled across The Superhero's Journey by Patrick McDonald. And it's his ode to his love of Silver Age Marvel. And he is the artist of Mutts, the comic strip in the I don't think they have an example of Mutts in here. It's a very loosely drawn, sketchy comic strip about puppies. Um, so I've not read too much of this yet, but I'm really enjoying what I've read so far. And he combines a little bit of his own cartooning with excerpts from from Marvel Comics. Sometimes just like that. These are all the covers that supposedly he would have seen on the rack after church when his father took them out to breakfast. And so he interweaves his own cartoons and things straight out of Marvel Comics. And I think the theme here is of the Watcher, and maybe we as readers and or creators are like the Watcher in Marvel Comics. I'm not sure if that's the whole theme, but we'll see. So yeah, so far really enjoying this. I'm not really sure where it's going or what the whole point will be. Um, it's visually very fun. It's a bit oversized compared to a comic book, so it's a nice size. And this list price is $30, but I did get this one online for a discount. I actually saw it. I saw it at a comic book store at the mall, and I picked this up and a few other comics I was going to buy there, and the clerks ignored me, and then were serving someone else, and it was obvious they were going to spend a very long time getting things for him and chatting with him, which was nice of them to chat with him. But eventually I put all the books down, went home, and then I ordered this, I think from Amazon. It wasn't on in-stock trades, which surprised me. It's from Abram Marvel Arts, are they calling themselves? Marvel Arts. So it's a line that Abrams is doing called Marvel Arts. But so far they've just got this and that um, Alex Ross book, the Fantastic Four book that Alex Ross did. They show it there. Anyway, cool book. Just wanted to mention it to you guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll be back either for another countdown or maybe before that. Some of you might have seen I did a live show with my new friend John Spilios, and we ended up talking for 2 hours when we intended originally a 1 hour chat. So we had a lot of fun. I don't know if it's something many people want to go back and listen to on the rewind, but it's there. We talk about how he grew up across the street from Joe Kubert and made friends with some of the Joe Kubert students, and also about his experiences working in a comic book shop and his growing up reading comics. So it was a really cool conversation. Anyway, talk to you all later, and enjoy all those comics.